say, okay? And that's really great. And I want them to tell you how they feel about this technology. So maybe we'll just do it from this side out. So Tim says stand out here so they could all see it. And Johan, stand out here. You know what it is? Partly, they're a little awestruck by the celebrity of you guys. So, you know, I know it's not, I know it's, you guys don't feel like you're Brad Pitt, but to them you are. Okay? To them you are. To us you are. All right, so stand out here out of the shadows. And so Tim, why don't we start, first of all, some of the challenges in computer graphics. I think the audience would love to hear about your reaction to G-Sync when you first saw it. What do you think are the implications of G-Sync? You know, now that it's available, what do you think is going to happen to the future of gaming? So, some of those type of questions.
It's really nice. The really interesting thing here is that it's one of the smoothness of graphics in games. It's one of those things that's not recognized in benchmarks, but it's critically important to the player's experience. And G-Sync gives all games an opportunity to achieve that. You know, previously you had to work immensely hard and make a lot of sacrifices to game content to hit a steady 60 frames a second. But with G-Sync you can hit any reasonable frame rate and potentially get the same level of smoothness and graphics. It's one of those magical moments to play a game like that and to see it on screen just completely free of artifacts. You know, it's like using an iPhone for the first time and just having this very seamless experience. You can't recognize instantly what's happening that makes it so nice, but you can see that it's head and shoulders above the previous experience.
What do you think is going to happen to game? As a game developer, when you have technology like this, how would you think about it differently?
It really frees up the game developers to make much more immersive experiences without the sort of sacrifices that we'd have to make in the previous generation. You know, if you were aiming at a steady 60 frames a second in the last generation, you would have to absolutely assure that every single frame hits that target. Whereas with G-Sync, you have a lot more wiggle room on each side because you have this kind of continuum of performance, anywhere between 30 to hundreds of frames a second, where the game will continue to operate smoothly and deliver a great experience without artifacts.
That's cool. Johan, what do you think? Tell us your feelings about G-Sync, and as you think about G-Sync, what are the implications to the future of gaming, and how would you develop games differently?
It's pretty awesome, to be blunt. It's really, it changes the perception quite a bit, and I was really surprised by that. When you actually see it in action, which people here will do, is the best possible experience you can get before a game. So if you're running 100 FPS in a game, typically without VSync that people do, that's sort of what we're used to in the best possible type of experience. But with this, well, you don't. It completely changes the actual perception of the picture. You see a continuous stream of something that your mind actually interprets as a moving picture. And I really like that. I was surprised by how my mind actually interpreted the information. And when we tried it out and just had more and more people in our studio just testing it, everyone just came out with the same experience there. And that's really quite amazing.
What do you think is going to happen to game development if this becomes widespread technology?
Yeah. I think one thing that has not really been reflected in games, Tim was into this a little bit of we design games for a specific budget, but games nowadays are not really the games you played 15 years ago or even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Games now are these massive experiences of very different types of environments that you have in your game, and sometimes you have a cutscene, and sometimes you have a giant star field that you're traveling through, and sometimes you have massive amounts of explosions, and it's essentially impossible to design a game for a fixed frame rate today. And you don't really want to. You have to make massive compromises in all areas. Even if we think our overall game runs at 60 FPS, we will have to rather around 14 millisecond perhaps to leave a little bit budget for things that we can't really predict in our environments. And with this, well, you don't really need to do it in the same way. Sure, you probably don't want to jump too much in frame rate, but if the storytelling and the actual game experiences are adapted for it, and with this technology, it actually makes it much easier to create the games that you actually want and the experiences you want, and still get a really good picture out of it all that your mind interprets in a very nice way.
That's really cool. Well, it's, you know, there are so few people who are as fanatical about displays as John. And the reason for that is because he's putting them awfully close to his eyes these days. And when he saw it, he wanted to come out and share his opinion with you guys and his first reactions with you guys. John, what do you think? And what do you think is going to happen as a result of this
for years
technology?
the PC space has had a willful blind spot to the artifacts of tearing and judder, where we can talk and try to get people excited about these relatively subtle effects like gamma correction and subsurface scattering and some of these things that we can spend tons of gigaflops on and kind of point out and squint, say this is really important, while blinding, covering our eyes over this huge tear line racing up and down the screen, this really fairly egregious artifact. And yeah, I've been a lot more sensitive about this for a long time. We did make the decision to make those compromises on our last title to be 60 frames per second, which meant that we did have this 15-20% cushion that we had to leave there to make sure that we wouldn't exceed that we would only very rarely wind up missing that, which meant that for any given amount of processing power that we targeted for, maybe 20% or more, in many cases a lot more, was just left completely unused because we were at the maximum frame rate. We were at 60 frames per second, and that was important for the smoothness that it gave us, but we had to make a lot of compromises to make that happen. And being able to use all the graphics power that you've got, to unlock it from 60, to open up towards the higher frame rates, and to be able to make it a smooth continuum there, rather than dropping from 60 down to 30 in one huge lurch, or suffering the stuttering, or suffering the tearing. It's just a better experience, and almost every single game can benefit from this, where being able to go over 60 frames per second winds up bringing in additional benefits, and once we start crossing some of the magic numbers above like 90, 95, heading towards 120, and we start enabling the low persistence mode and some of these things that add additional benefits that you haven't even seen here today. So I mean, the G-Sync technology involves not just the variable refresh, but also some of the low persistence modes, which will have additional benefits as games start moving towards those higher frame rates. But the only way we're going to get games towards those higher frame rates is by having this smooth incremental path. I mean, yeah, we could ship an old game remade like Doom 3 BFG that could run at 120 frames per second, but the only way you're going to start seeing absolute modern AAA titles is if they can creep up and have 60, then 70, then somebody's got a reason to put in some crazy dual SLI system that's going to go ahead and spend another $500 on the video cards, but oh my god, it runs this at 120 frames per second, low persistence. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know what we're going to do here is this. I know you guys, I know I do. Just want to sit back, put these three guys up here, and just blast questions at them. Isn't that right? Would you agree with that? Okay. And so here's what we're going to do. I've got so many questions for these guys. Let's do this. Let's finish. We have one more announcement to make, and right after that, we'll have these guys come back, and we'll sit down. Is that the game plan? My boss is Cheryl, right? Okay, that's the game plan.
After lunch.
We're gonna have you guys come. We're gonna have you guys come back. We're gonna skip lunch. Are you kidding me? Just so you guys know, these guys flew in just to say that about G-Sync, just to let you guys know how excited they are about G-Sync, how important this is to the future of video games. We're so appreciative that you guys are here, but you guys know that while you guys are here, we're gonna suck your brain dry of just about every possible thing we can possibly learn about the future of gaming and the future of graphics. So why don't you guys come back in a little moment, okay? Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.